Welcome, everybody. Tonight, tonight we'll be having Dibujando El Camino comics design, hosted by the Latinx Comic Arts Fest. This is the after hours. I am Bobby Hernandez, the host of Cuentos Y Comics. Many may recognize me as a Latino Comics Expo operations manager. Tonight with me, I have Oscar Garza. Oscar Garza, along with Rolando Esquivel, make up Five Meets Comics. They're a team from Brownsville, Texas, whose mission is to fill two roles shamefully underserved in comics: comedy and Chicano Latinx main characters. They are storytellers of hope and perseverance, with people of color front and center. They also have a line of Latinx-inspired pop culture posters and apparel, as well as a role in Austin-based comedy wrestling, the comedy wrestling troupe Party World Wrestling. They have just completed Mashbone and Grifty #4, Son of the Master, which is available now digitally in print in print, and the print is coming soon. Jose Cabrera is a Los Angeles-based artist. His art is influenced by Latino, African, and Asian cultures, along with his love for comics and his urban upbringing. He's currently active in the art community, participating in art shows with up-and-coming urban and comic artists. Currently, he's working on bilingual children's books. My next panelist is J-Gonzo. He's a Chicano artist who attended Orange County High School of the Arts Visual Arts program. He went to a terrible trade school for a degree in graphic designing. He apprenticed and tattooed professionally for a number of years before entering the world of advertising and design. Gonzo has spent the last 25 plus years using his creative skills and at ad agencies, toy and comic companies, design studios, freelancing, creating his own comic book title La Mano del Destino, and publishing imprint Castle and Key Publications. Gentlemen, welcome. We got that out of the way.
Hello.
How's it going, gentlemen? So let's get started with today's panel again on comics and design. I'm here to guide the conversation. So let's start off with Oscar. Please, what are your thoughts on, not your thoughts, but you on Mashbone and Gritty, you have developed or designed some awesome, cool-looking characters. Speak to us about character design. What goes into creating or designing these characters?
Well, first, the way, how do you design characters? Oh my gosh. Well, the way that I took it was I went a very organic kind of way. Like, I'm not a big technical or mechanical kind of guy, big robots and stuff like that. So I really like the organic stuff, which really drew me towards away from Transformers as a kid and more towards Ninja Turtles, So I liked that kind of mutant gritty style, and that also led me to things more outside the box. Like the older I got, then the Gorillas showed up. I was very much influenced by the Gorillas and their art style, very angular, which is what I originally did not like. But they're organic characters that are really sharp, really intrigued me. So I started doing that in my own art, mixed with trying to be good at hands and feet in college. So hands and feet is a hot topic in the art world, in the comic book world. So I spent a lot of time trying to get decent at that, at least competent. And that really drew me towards, it's a whole roller coaster to get to the end of your character. So gorillas, hands and feet, studying the movie Tarzan a lot. So that led me to do more homunculi kind of characters, which has led me to Mashbone, the monkey man with a bone through his head. And it's mostly just pulling from a lot of different sources and what feels good. So what feels good to somebody else will lead to what they will create. And so what I settled with is the completely absurd mixed with very grounded reality. I don't draw any abs in my comics because I don't know anybody who really has them. I don't think abs are real. I think they're fake. I've never met anyone who has abs. Uh,
Well,
but
that's
I met a lot of people that got guts. So there's a lot of guts and fat butts and love handles in my comics, and they're done, naturally. It's just, they're just there. Uh, and that mixed with everything else that I learned in college, like anatomy and specifically hands and feet. I went overboard with the hands and feet, which is
yeah.
why every character has big old hands and feet, but mostly Smashpoint. He's a little extra with that.
You definitely have another storyline there where like your characters get implanted abs. So definitely, man.
Oh yeah. That's something that happens later in the book, but
But
that's not the norm.
But in regards to not only designing these characters, gentlemen, but how does color play a huge role when designing these comics? Jose and Gonzo, feel free to jump in and kind of talk about just how you guys are very known for the artistic style with distinct color palettes. I'll start with you, Gonzo. For example, go ahead.
Oh no! What's the question? Just color approach overall, or did you have a specific question?
Yeah, so I've heard you mention, I've heard you bring up the movie Traffic and how Traffic.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I was just done seeing sepia tone, brown, dirty versions of Mexico being shown in American pop culture. It's a lazy assessment of the country, and it's a weirdly emblematic of American fetishization of both Mexican poverty and violence, and it's just not true. It's a monomyth that has been created to sell movie tickets, especially being kind of like living in a Mexican American household and seeing the bright, vibrant colors of like my nana's neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like there's no white houses on her neighborhood. Like my grandmother's house was teal, and it had like a pink room, and it just it was just such a weird juxtaposition, and so. When I decided to do my comic, I wanted a limited color approach because I was very much trying to make it look like a 60s comic. And so I really wanted to use like the 24 color method that they kind of had. I limited mine to like 12. And then I shifted what would be kind of primary colors into like a more Latino palette. So like, kind of Kelly greens became kind of chartreuses, and like reds became magentas. And I just shifted it all into like a Latino palette to kind of give it a feel of being, a Chicano comic. Like it's about Mexican wrestlers that should look like Mexico or look like Mexican culture, especially like have the bright, vibrant, pageantry of that culture or of that sport. And but I really wanted to give myself some guidelines. I'm like, I'm only going to use these 12 colors, and then these 3 colors are going to be visual signifiers of my character. So the chartreuse of his costume, the magenta of his costume, and there's another bright blue that is like an accent to his costume. It's like a little bit on his belt, a little bit on his mask. Those only ever get used on La Mano, so that they're like a visual signifier of his presence within a scene. So now I really only have like 9 colors I can use. And then I just wanted to see if I could pull it off, if I could not break my rules. I did make some Ben-Day patterns, which were color dots over color fields, or kind of screens of those colors, of those 12 colors, but I only ever use those colors, and I use them solidly. Like there's no blends, there's no gradients, there's no soft feathered edges. Like I wanted to look like I was cutting amberlith and shooting plates from film like we would have done in the 1960s. So yeah, it was just, a lot of it was just to capture the aesthetic of the time period and to kind of like, but also to curate it to an ethos that was commensurate with my Latino upbringing. So that was my kind of like the high-minded approach to what I did. But yeah, ultimately I just wanted to make them look like crappy old comics. So that's how I ended up there.
Jose?
Yeah, I want to order that Pantone Latino swash book. Where do you get that? Where do you buy that? Gonzo?
I had to make it, dude. Yeah. I don't know if you got my Kickstarter, the back matter, it has a whole 2-page spread where I break down like the colors. Like I literally had a CMYK breakdown. So
I gotta support your Kickstarter. I was looking for Oscars, but Oscar said that no funciona. No funciona. No, I mean, when you talk about color, like I love exploring colors. I try to use colors that are complementary. I don't have, culturally speaking, like that's a hard one to kind of tap into, as far as like if you said like what's your Dominican upbringing, what are the colors that you grew up with? I'm like plátano verde, mango naranja. I don't know, like it's a difficult one, but I like the way Gonzo framed his in the '60s context, and that works within what he's trying to convey in his books. I think that's beautiful. I'm a big fan of Gonzo's and his work. It's just masterful and beautiful.
Thank you.
But that being said, my work tends to be, if you're familiar with my work, and if you aren't, let me introduce myself. Yo me llamo Jose Cabrera, and I do illustrations and posters. And I like doing work. Right now, my work is being defined by my environment, by the social political environment, by what's going on in my subconscious. And that's the framework. Now, making the frame a little tighter about color, I like choosing colors that really are complementary, make people kind of go, what the fuck? Ooh, can I curse in here? Sorry. You can bleep that out later. But that make you go, what? I was telling Oscar before about the creature from the Black Lagoon. And I said, how does he look pink? What would that look like? Right? Always trying to go against what you would normally see when you see something. Right? And I think it was a decent response. The referendum is you want to do kick-ass art, right? And people go oh, that's dope. But for me, it's more like aesthetically what's pleasing to me. Bobby, I thought you had a question. Did you?
No, I was just going to bring that up. Right now, the hot topic is why is the creature from the Black Lagoon pink? And you're explaining that right now.
Yeah. Someone asked on the thread, hey, why is the creature from the Black Lagoon pink? Why pink? And I'm like, why not? Before we got on, we were in the green room, Oscar and I, having donuts, and we were talking about, what that meant. Gonzo, we ate all the donuts. Sorry.
Oh man, I'm off of those. I can't do it. Thanks. Thanks for taking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about handles and no abs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I think color choice is just it, and I don't want to go on too much about this, but I think the color choices are what I really look at to convey, kind of bringing in the person into the illustration and the story. My illustrations are one-offs. They try to tell a story, and mine is more like subliminal art, where I'm not telling too much story, but in the actual art, I try to throw what they call little Easter eggs, or what does that mean? And I let people use it as a projective, right? But being clear on the image, it's not abstract, it's very clear. Right now I'm on a monster kick. So I've got more monsters coming, so don't hide in the closet or something like that. Or under your bed. Don't look under your bed.
And then Oscar, in regards to color, tell us a little bit of when just using black and white or grays, kind of just some of the aspect that goes into just doing that color tone.
I ripped off J-Gonzo. That's what I did.
Okay. Yeah, but in regards to just what to watch out for, right?
Yeah, and that was a joke, but that's kind of a half joke. The Mano Destino's books were pretty dang influential on me in the last issue of Mashbone and Grifty that we just finished, as far as color goes. I really wanted to take a lot of chances with it, and yeah, that was pretty dang inspirational as well. So what I did is, the first issue was black and white because I didn't even want to mess with color. Color was not my thing. I'm still not good at it. And issue 2 and 3, artistically, I kind of farted them out just to get them out because otherwise I wouldn't have an issue 2 and 3. And I went very simple with the colors. I just kind of did a sort of a monochromatic, light blue hue, nice and easy on the eyes, But then I started looking at a couple webcomics here and there and noticed that they used color to their advantage, not to make it pretty per se, but to convey emotion. So I started going with that. So when poop hits the fan, everything turns red. You're looking at a flashback, it's bright yellow or the sepia for flashbacks. And then If they're in like an evil layer, it goes dark purple or dark blue. So I started sticking to that. So then I created our own little formula of kind of a. It's used all over the place in television, specifically like that John Wick kind of neo noir look, where everything is lighted, very pinks and purples. They use the color to convey emotion, and it could be almost monochromatic, but it's not. But the way it's lit, everything has that haze of color, and that's what we're doing. That's what I do now. And for the Kickstarter that we finished last year, I went. Not only did I not only did I color issue 1 for the first time, I even went back into issue 2 and 3 and touched them up a lot to make 1, 2, 3, 4 to make them look a little more like they belong together. Because issue 2 and 3, like I said, I farted out the art real fast. But once I had all these little touches, like the art came to life. Color can really bring a quick sketch to life if you take the time. If you can't take the time in certain departments, another one might be able to pick up the slack. And I think that's what I accomplished in issue 2 and 3. And then I always like to say issue 1 was the prettiest thing I've ever drawn, which kind of made me sad because then I had issue 2 and 3 and a bunch of other stuff afterwards. But now issue 4 is the prettiest thing I've ever drawn, and that's thanks to just building upon that process. And going back and fixing issue 1, 2, and 3 really helped me finish issue 4 and color it exactly the way it needed to be. And by then, I knew when things are chill, I color it this way. When things are crazy, I color it this way. And there's a certain scene, I don't want to give it away, but you were mentioning it a little earlier, Bobby, where stuff gets really crazy. And I had to come up with something that I never used before. And I went full into that pink and purple, I believe the music is called vaporwave style, like that 90s aesthetic. So or 80s retro aesthetic almost. So there's like 5 or 6 pages in there that just go full fever dream, and it gets pretty nuts. And I'm really happy with the way it came out.
There's a reason why I chose the theme or for tonight's video, because it just the 80s really exemplified kind of like just these colors in a way. Jose, we know you for the last. For the last 10 years, you have been designing the Latino Comics Expo. The posters. Tell us about your process, and you've really created some iconic imagery these last 10 years. Tell us about that.
Yeah, man. Actually, you know what? Let me bring a prop. I should have brought it before, but give me 1 second. Okay,
Sure.
I'm right here. I'm going to grab it. It'll exemplify a lot of the color choices that I made.
And just like that, he was out of my life.
No. So the choices when Javier and I and Ricardo started talking back in 2010, and they were telling me about the idea of the Latino Comic Expo. I went the cheesy tropes, right? About like, oh, it should have like a big Mexican hat, or like a cactus scene, or like like skulls, like the cheesy stuff. I had to get the cheesy stuff out of me when I'm designing. I just do it and doodle it, not seriously, just to get it out of my system. But then I went to some of the stuff that was around my apartment. I had just moved back from Mexico, and I had bought some art. There's a I don't know if you know the town of the country. The country is Mexico, and there's Guadalajara. There's also Morelia. And in Morelia is the city, right? And then what's the state? Forget.
But you got me.
Yeah, no, but it's
I got you all. So it's in the state of the city is Morelia, but I think it's. But there's a town called Pátzcuaro, and Pátzcuaro has a big art festival. That's where the in Day of the Dead they have the lanchas that you could take out to the island of the dead. Anyway, I went to the art festival and I saw this guy painting this mask, this wooden mask, and I was like, yo, that's amazing. And he's painting, and I said, man, can I buy that from you? He's like, oh, I'm still painting it. And I was like, yeah, but can I? And he's like, yeah, come back in an hour. And I went around and I came back and he had finished it. And I was like, the colors on it, I love the colors. They were bright, they were like vivacious, and for me, let me show you the mask.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Right? It's like, this thick wood, and it was just beautiful. These come off, right? And just this, he was just painting all this. This is like 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. And I just love the patterns and the colors, and just, it was all over the place. And I said, I have to have that piece. And, he said 50 pesos. I was like, what? That's nothing. I gave him 3 times that. I was like, here's 150 pesos. He was really happy. Not to say that I roll that way, but it was just, it was worth more for me, and I wanted it to be worth more. So I gave him more for it. Anyway, that was the inspiration for the, what Javier and I call the coño man, right? Like the dude that exemplifies the face of the Latino Comic Expo. And it came from that. All right. I was looking up when I was drawing, I was like looking at that. I was like, yeah. So I did a whole bunch. I have a couple of other masks also that, as you look at the posters, you see all these masks in the beginning, the first 3 posters. And then the designs, they came a lot from the Japanese and Mexican influences, and the colors that came from there. I'm not going to sit here and kind of go like, yeah, I did my research and looked at Japanese culture. It just, from osmosis and just being exposed to it, my color palette, like I had it in my mouth. It was like I tasted it, and I was able to slap it on. And not that I'm great at color, but I know not to put, I know my color wheel, and I know what colors are whacked together, so that don't work. So I do a lot of work. I ink, I pencil, ink, and then the color is really where I go at it, right? Shades of it. But anyway, it was for me very important for the color to really be something that was aesthetically pleasing, and like I said before, bringing in the person into the art, and really having eye candy, but not too much. You don't want it to be too sweet, right? Like oh, I'm gonna eat all this candy, but you want it to be just like a nice kind of couple of flavors, right? Nice flavor profile of color. But anyway, I go on too long.
But you mentioned the color palette, and one thing Jason J-Gonzo has really done, the pinks and the greens. Jason, tell us about the just the some of the work you've done with J-Gonzo Designs.
Oh man,
I mean, I have one right here. I actually have 2. I mean, again, so all your guys' work has defined what I dubbed the Latinx verse, right? It's just like you guys. From Oscar, we'll get to it with merchandising with a Latinx shirt, but Jay, tell us about J-Gonzo Designs and just these these greens and these pinks and everything that goes with it.
Oh man, I mean that's a big question. I mean, well, so my design work stems from the ad world and the commercial art world, and I tend to look at what the audience is that I'm going to speak to. So I do a lot of research. Like if I'm designing I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good logo I've done recently. I did a land development company recently, so I just started looking at land development websites, and there, sooner or later, you'll shake out a color palette that's kind of like the industry standard almost. Just by default, there's a preponderance of color palettes that get used, and I always like to either just live there, but then kind of turn the vibrancy up, because we live in such a everyone's afraid of color, or a lot of novices are afraid of color, and so they hedge their bet by turning vibrancy down. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna be the thing that they know, but kind of on a visceral level, when someone looks at it, they'll see the greens of land developing companies, but then they'll see them turned up, and instantly it just looks like a more intense version of this industry they're already familiar with. So it's just a nice little emotional trick, because there's no more the most I'm trying to think, subtle, I guess, or tacit understanding, the most emotional thing you get out of a comic book typically is the palette, right? Because the line work is delineative, right? It's defining shape, and then the shading, it defines volume, and then the staging sets like the action that's happening. But color really sets mood because people don't understand it in a lot of ways, and so it sneaks in the back door and it hits them in that emotional place that they don't like intellectualize, and they definitely don't over intellectualize it. They just go, oh, that works or it doesn't, because they haven't like studied like split triads or split complementary color theory. Like they don't know the difference between like color and hue and vibrancy and saturation. Like these are all just words that like most people would use interchangeably, right? Like they'll say color for hue, or they'll say chroma for hue. Like when they actually mean tone and not vibrancy, we'll say tone instead of vibrancy. Yeah. Anyway, it's a unique trick, and it's where the emotionality can live. And to me, as an illustrator, I kind of have two MOs, and that's like my job is to abbreviate reality, not to reflect it. So I'm always making decisions on what I'm going to leave in and what I don't want to be there, so that the viewer can fill in the missing information with their own experience to make it more personal with them. And then secondly is the curate an experience for them, right? Because nobody cares about what I write and nobody cares about what I draw. They only care about how they feel about what I write or draw, or even what I design. And so I'm always trying to like sneak in that backdoor to emotion that's not going to be, fully cognitive in their head, that they can't intellectualize and verbalize even, that can live in this nonverbal, like emotional part of their brain, so they can just get a feeling of things. And color is the best way to do that. What is it? Like John Updike said that all art carries with it a need to confess its artifice, right? And so when I curate my, like, it says, when I curate my comic palette the way that I do, it says that like, this is unreal. Like I'm telling you right up front, this is a story. This is super not real. So don't get hung up on like, how does it really work? What is this mysterious power? Like the ins and outs are irrelevant now, because I've already told you that it's made up. I've confessed its artifice. That's why the paper feels the way it does. That's why like there's so much, like you can smell the ink coming off of it. Like it's an experience, but it is one of a confession of artifice. It's telling you this is a story. And my color palette does that too, because nothing looks like that, but I'm making decisions. And so it leads one to almost on like a lizard reptilian brain part, like kind of start filling in what my motivations might have been. Like there's a reason that guy's red. There's a reason that the creature from the Black Lagoon is pink, right? Like what? And I'll tell you what, man, I'll see 90 creatures of the Black Lagoon, over the course of 2 weeks, but the pink one's the one I'm going to remember, because it begged a question, because it put a conundrum in my head. And like, as a creator, putting an idea in someone's head, planting a seed there, and knowing that you bought a little real estate in their brain is like the best feeling ever. Because the thing I don't want to ever be is dismissible. I don't want anybody just to blow past my work as if it was just like, I kind of get that. And I think that when comics kind of reach for realism, they kind of allow themselves to be dismissed super easily. But when you really make it surreal, you demand engagement. It demands consideration, and color is a way to do that on an emotional level like no other. I hope that answered your question. There was a lot of rambling that happened there.
I love it. Can you pick up for that?
That was great.
No, thanks, man.
Jose, you agree? So can you pick you up for that?
Well, I mean, Oscar. I think Oscar has something to add to that, because I think I spoke a little bit much.
All right,
but then I'll answer that later.
No.
All right.
I mean, I don't want to
No, we're good.
butter anyone's bread or anything, but I mean, you two guys, color wise, I mean, y'all are a whole other levels. I'm faking it.
You're doing you, man. You're doing you.
I yield to y'all when it comes to color theory and whatnot.
No, I think color. I love the way Gonzo. Oh, sorry, Bobby, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
We're good. But like,
yeah,
no, you were good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that like what Gonzo was saying, piggybacking off of that, I don't think I could say it any better than the way he splayed it out. I love the way you said that, Gonzo, where you'll remember the pink black creature from the Black Lagoon, where it was like, that creature from the Black Lagoon pink, like, why did he do that? Leave a question mark. Yeah. And that is, the choices that I make in color, I try to really, you're right, the emotional effect that it has, right? People, stories have been told over and over again. And there's only certain amounts of ways to play a guitar, right? How many notes there are, right? And then there's this idea of color when you put it in, and it's so layered, so amazing, right? To go that, like, to make a choice to say, like, I'm gonna do I'm gonna go all in on Purple Rain, right? I'm gonna use prints. I'm gonna use pinks, all the purple hues. I'm just gonna go all in on that, and just like you said, turn it up, right? You're like Little Red Corvette. Yeah, you want Little Red Corvette? I'm gonna give you Little Red Corvette, right? And just like turn that sucker up, make the sky and the universe pink and purple, right? In ways that can really make that illustration sing in a way. I love that, Gonzo, that emotional state that it is left.
Thank
you. Jumping off of or continuing with just the design, right? Oscar, tell us about you're like, again, I mentioned you designed the Latinx T-shirt that's been pretty much.
I'm not wearing it. Damn.
But I mean, it takes wit. It takes wit, like just the witness of designing that. Tell us about that that piece, and then just merchandising in itself.
One thing that we do in our comics to start off with is comedy. I try not to be too cool because I'm not. So one thing that I can't do is the coolness of comics, like a really badass superhero, super gritty, too cool for school kind of guy. Like, I don't got it in me. So me and my writing partner, Rolando Esquivel, we are really big comedy nerds, comedy buffs. So we wanted to set out to make comedy comics. So a lot of that is satire, satire and parody. And to do that well, you can't just rip something off. You have to add a little bit of social commentary in there and do it in a playful, inviting way that doesn't get people up in arms, You really got to sneak in those messages here and there, not do it in a preachy kind of way. And that bleeds into our shirts, our comic, our pop culture apparel. So, we're big on representation and things like that. So we wanted to make Latinx inspired, Mexican American inspired, shirts. And the easiest way to do that is mashups. The first time we went to a convention, all we were selling was our book, issue 1. The Latino Comic Expo in Brownsville, Texas, the one before the Modesto one. We only had one thing on our table, which was our comic, and we were sitting next to a guy who was making tons of money. And I looked at the stuff he was selling. He was selling like Batman pictures, Pickle Rick pictures, things like that. And I was like, wow, I'm sitting next to the dude who invented Pickle Rick. How cool is that? And he's like, nah, I just drew it and people are buying it. That's how this works. And I thought, wow, that's actually kind of cool. Like, maybe I should just draw a bunch of Batmans and Pickle Ricks, and then I can use that money to fund my comic. So that was the mission the day after the convention. And I started thinking like, I don't want to draw a bunch of Pickle Ricks and Batmans, like I don't want to do that. But I will draw Elote Rick because it's funny. So I started drawing that, and I started making a good amount of money. I don't know if the IRS is watching this. I started making some money off of it. And then I started doing more things like that. Like I did the Luchador Infinity War shirt / poster. And I made that as a poster, and those always sell out at the conventions. And those, it's like mixing the parody mashups invite people in because it's something they already know. It's something they're comfortable with already. And that's something that, Joe Blow at the office is not going to have because he didn't go to the convention. So you're going to show up with something special, something new, and something that has a little bit of culture in it as well. So we do the Lucha theme for a lot of stuff. We also have a Lucha Loteria shirt on our website that's based on a short film we made a couple years ago. And the thought process is just that. It's just adding a little bit of our culture to things that don't have it, and the Latinx thing is a huge one for us because Latinx is such a divisive topic, you love it or you hate it. And that's the way a lot of people are.
Yeah.
And personally, I respect both opinions, and I also don't, it's such a, I don't want to say silly, but it's such a thing to want to push on other people for and against,
Yeah.
and there's no reason to. I mean, in my opinion, language evolves. It constantly evolves. There's no set, thing about language. Well, there's Webster's dictionary, but you know what? They update that thing every year. There's no set thing. So the whole Latinx thing, personally, I think it's fine. And but I can totally agree that nobody knows how to say it. So me and my buddy were talking, and it's like, it sounds kind of like X-Men, like Latin X. Like you have to separate the two, and then you say them real fast. So that's when we came up with that shirt. I did an intense Google search to see if anyone else has done it, and nobody else has done it. So we done it, and it's pretty popular. It got popular enough to where we had to start printing shirts to sell at conventions. Because I mean, you're at a convention, and somebody says, "I want that shirt," and you say, "Go to my website," and they'll say, "No, I got $20 right now that I want to spend. I'm going to use this $20 to go buy J-Gonzo stuff instead because he's here." And so, we started having to make shirts for that, and we sold a bunch of them at the Modesto show, which was pretty nice.
Yeah,
and now we have them up on our website as well. Teespring, we have a Teespring store, which has a lot of different stuff too. You can get them as like mugs and just anything that they sell. It's pretty crazy, and we get a pretty good cut of it. But yeah, it was just parody. Yeah. Our shirts have to be a little funny as well and silly. The whole Latinx thing can be a hot topic, like I said. So by sticking it on a silly comic book logo, it kind of makes it silly, and hopefully takes the spooky out of it.
Mm-hmm. Jay, you also designed one yourself. You combined the A and the O. That took design. Tell us about that, because you went a completely different route. Tell us what kind of inspired that particular Latinx logo and shirt.
I'm trying to think. That was just it was literally an explanation diagram that I did for someone. It was like, it's just, the X is just the A and the O. And so I did it where it was it was additive light theory. So when the colors combine, they make white. So where they overlapped, it was like, but I showed that they were the component colors. Like you could see the misregistration in the component colors. So where they overlapped, like the word Latin was all like white, but you could see the little halos of the component colors. And then where the X and the O came together, I literally just did it as an Instagram post. I have a way of being snarky on Instagram, especially with design stuff. Like I have my like design 101 kind of stuff that I'm always preaching. Like I have that one that has the picture of the star, and then it has the word star, and then it has a star with the word star underneath it, and it's like, do this or this, never this, like that whole like. And I guess Chip Kidd did that at one point in his life too. So everyone's like, oh, Chip Kidd did that. I'm like, it doesn't make it less true, But anyway, I do a lot of dumb stuff like that where I just like prod at people who make bad design decisions, or I don't know. I'm snarky online, I guess. So it was a snarky thing, and then we were in the middle of promoting La Voz de Mayo with Henry Barajas that we did over at Top Cow. And he was like, yo, dude, that thing's cool. Let's make shirts out of it as one of our Kickstarter rewards. And I was like, all right, I don't like, it's additive light theory. So I don't know how that works as a print, right? Because that's subtractive light theory on a, when you're talking inks, it's subtractive. And when you're talking light, it's additive. So I'm like, man, if they can pull it off, here's the files. Like, I think it was like a raster version. Like I didn't even do a vector version of it. I'm like, here's the raster 1080 by 1080 that I built for it. So if you guys can make it happen, make it happen. The print shop did a pretty cool job on pulling the effect off. So that was really just Henry Barajas pushing me into doing that. It was a dumb joke that just became a thing. Like like those LA shirts that I did when the Dodgers won. I did like an old English style LNA coming together, kind of like the Dodger logo, but done with like a very like kind of Vato style to it. And then like I got hit up with so many people to like make those into shirts. I'm like, oh, I'll just make those into shirts. And everybody was pointing out at shows. They would read the first issue of my comic. They liked that little phrase where like the luchador dons his mask not to conceal his identity, but to reveal it. They're like, that's a really cool sentiment. Like, where did you hear that? I'm like, I wrote that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's me. And then like I had more than a dozen people tell me that should be on a shirt. So I just drew it and put it on a t-shirt. So yeah, most of the things that are successful for me t-shirt wise are just dumb things I put online or out in the world that once more than 10 people tell me they want it as a t-shirt, I make it as a t-shirt. So that's my MO. I'm too stupid to kind of like really be a marketing, that kind of like what's going to sell. Because the things I think are going to sell never sell. Like, oh, this is a great thing. I put it out there. Nobody wants any of them. I like went to New York Comic Con and I did dumb little 8x10 prints of the Statue of Liberty with a luchador mask on. And it just said NYCC 2016, I think it was when I went out there. I think I charged like $5 for them because they were just dumb prints. I was sold out by day 2 and I'd done like 100 of them. It was just like, yeah. And I never like, and the things I thought I needed a lot of, I brought home. The dumb thing that I literally did like 2 days before I left for that trip ended up selling out. So yeah, I don't know anything about merchandising other than I don't know anything about merchandising.
But it takes great skill. And I think each one of your guys' backgrounds, career backgrounds, like tell us about like how that may play a role in designing. For example, Jose, the psychology, right? The psychology of these curves and these lines. What's your take?
Oh, I never heard it said that way. That's interesting. Maybe we should adopt that psychology of the line. Wow, that sounds like a thesis. I'll do my PhD on that. No, I think what you're referring to is like my daytime job. I'm a therapist. At night, I don the mask of an illustrator, and I literally actually burn the midnight oil. I'm doing illustrations at night, raising my daughter and doing therapy during the day. But yeah, my background before I became a therapist, I had a BFA, a Bachelor in Fine Arts, and I majored in design, graphic design, and minored in illustration. So, I cut my teeth with linotype, ruby lips, like setting type by, like kerning and all that stuff, Gonzo's like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hey, real quick question. Let me interrupt here. Do you remember there used to be a math formula where if you had your word count and type area, you did this math formula and it told you what point size over what leading size would fill that area off, and then you would send your type out to be set like that?
Yeah,
do you know the formula I'm talking?
But I don't remember what the math formula is.
I remember that it wasn't. Yeah. Shit, nobody even remembers crazy. That. It's super old school. All right, continue, man.
Typography. No, dude, chime in. That's great. And bringing back old memories of being back in school and like using a Xerox, no computers and everything was by copy machine. You want to blow up type. Yeah. And that was great. I mean, that was very organic, using ruby lifts and all that stuff. But anyway, the question of the psychology of line, I love that. And how that plays in. When you say psychology of line, Bobby, frame the question a little tighter for me.
I'm just trying to tie a little bit of kind of like the day-to-day, kind of like your day-to-day with just like some of your designs. You're like your line work. It's marvelous, and I'm trying to kind of highlight that. But tell us about both. Your line, like
my ink work or my pencil work or my ink. My ink work is like I study some amazing artists out there. I look at their line work. I study the way they just do their line work. There's oh my God, what's his name? Farsh. I should know these guys. But like Austin, who worked with Byrne. His line work and his ink work is amazing. And there's this new cat now that all I do all day long is look at the way he does his cross hatching his lines, and how he skips a beat and how thin his things are. It's like, oh Lord, he's beautiful. It'll come to me in a minute, but yeah, I mean, I think the ink work is paramount for me. I think if I were to compare inking the blacks and color, I don't know, Gonzo, and what you think about this, but for me, the blacks are just phenomenal. It's equal for me. It's equal. And then the emotional value of having blacks and the way the composition, right? Composition for me comes first, right? Like I want to bring the person into the piece, right? Like I look at Gonzo's work. Sorry, Oscar, I haven't really studied your work as much as I've looked at Garza, so I apologize. I will study up on you.
It's okay.
Bro, I'm going to look at your stuff and study it. But with Gonzo, because I know Gonzo's work, I've seen it over the years, he just has a dynamic way of creating composition that brings you into the piece, right? And he talked about the emotional value of color. I'm really, looking at how you bring the composition, right? Because once I get the composition down, I'm sketching all the time to make sure I have, the x-axis going, right? Like for me, it's really important to have this kind of like drawing it in, and maybe even, like I'm not gonna do your superhero doing this or whatever the person is. I'm gonna do it like this, and I'm gonna bring it forward and do something like that, so that you're like, what the hell? How do I get in there? Right? It starts to attract you in and bring you into each piece, right? Lately, I've been looking at more about storytelling with the illustrations. Like I actually entered a contest for Universal Pictures called Out of the Shadows, and it's about they're trying to. And Gonzo, I should have hit you. I don't know if Gonzo, have you heard about this one? It was Universal Pictures was looking for the classic monster, but the new iteration of it.
Oh no, I haven't heard of it. I've been head down lately, just doing my own thing right now.
Yeah, I came across this. I did this Creature of the Black Lagoon. I did a Frankenstein. I haven't released that one yet, and I did a Dracula, because those two, the Dracula and the Frankenstein, were commissioned, and I'm waiting for them to do their Kickstarter. And then once I get that, then I'll show it to the public. But the Black Lagoon is the one that they didn't want, and I was like, dude, that's But the Frankenstein and the Dracula. Anyway, so I did a couple of pieces for the Universal monster, right? Coming up with my own monster, designing it, and really what their instructions were: tell us a story in one illustration. Give us emotion. Give us and I pulled out all the stops. I was like, oh man, this is a great challenge, right? To tell a story. And Gonzo, you're right. The color and the emotion, now that I look back at it, was very important in this piece, because I could only tell the story, the character story, because they're wanting to choose a new character, the new classic monsters, right? They might be pitched for a movie.
Oh, nice.
And $10,000.
That's very nice.
That's very nice. So anyway, to answer the question, the blacks were important, the tone, the way the story was told, the format, and what brought you into the story, right? The expression, the colors were important. I really used I just used two colors, and then the two colors that I used were like raspberry and lime, right? So these two colors, right? And then there was variations of that tones, and I think I threw a splash of like lemon in there, right? I'm using food analogies here, right? The deliciousness of this meal. Anyway, and for me, the decisions to tell a story come with the blacks, and like Gonzo said, the colors that have emotion in it, and I like the flat colors, like that's. I'm partially a big fan of Gonzo's work because he uses a lot of flat colors, and I try to use a lot of flat colors. I rarely use any feathering or any kind of shading, because I really like I like layering colors too, and the transparencies that come with that. And I cheat with Photoshop. I'm not gonna, Photoshop. That's why I was like, why would I even try to do this with washes? That's no way, man. I'm not gonna get that much color. But anyway. I rambled on too much, but I hope that helps the understanding of some of the processes and the decisions I make to use blacks and that color palette that's limited.
Awesome, man. We have a few minutes left for tonight's discussion. Can you guys provide any tips for any young people watching out there, whether it's from Modesto Junior College or anybody that'll watch this? Any tips on them when it comes to designing comics, or any advice for these up and coming artists and creatives? I'll start with we're going to take it on first.
Oscar, you up?
All right. Steal from everybody, but at the same time, be yourself. I name dropped a lot of stuff, and like the Gorillas and Tarzan, and but another person I took a lot from is a guy named Carlos Meglia, the Argentine artist. He passed away a long time ago, unfortunately, but he did this 5-series Star Wars comic. I was in like high school. It was like in the 90s. And it's very guerrilla-like, a lot of sharp corners, and it looks animated. It looks alive. And I was just fixated on that stuff. And at the time, I only had one issue of this 5-issue thing, and I just traced it as a kid, just trying to get that style and loving it. The fingernails, the big blocky hair, and Carlos Meglia was also a huge influence on me. So like, just steal from everybody, but make it your own. You know, like I said, like I can't draw certain things that Carlos Meglia did content wise, but I was influenced by his style. Same thing with all the other things that I mentioned. Just make it your own.
Meglia did that Superman Infinite City, right? That was like one of the last things he did before. That thing was so great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember seeing that and being like, this guy should do everything. And then he passed like a year or two later. I mean, it was really soon after that he passed away. It was like just a huge blow to what could have been in comics. I think when he did that, it was like at the absolute worst time to do that, because I think things like Frank Quietly were kind of taking over, and like Rafael Grampa and Paul Pope, and that kind of like almost an indie sensibility to like mainstream comic making, where it's like, you know, everyone was brush inking and everybody was Jeff Lemire was hot, and it was just like being that refined wasn't cool. You know, you wanted like a more of a raw edge to it. You know, it's like I think that if he had just lived a few more years when like people started accepting like, you know, just anything, you know, like when the gates opened up and everyone was like, oh, as long as it's cool, it's cool. It doesn't have to be like what's hot right now. And right. I think he would have been huge if he had just kind of like lived a little bit longer. But that Infinite City is fantastic. If anyone listening wants like a master's course on how to make a comic book, check out Superman Infinite City. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
No, I was done, and I completely agree.
Nice.
But any advice, Jay?
Oh, mine, you know, again, just kind of overall is just the emotional truth of each moment. You know, like how is the emotional truth of each element of the comic pay off, from the full story to each 2-page spread to the panels to what's inside of each of those panels, like what's happening on a core level. Like my advertising job kind of has this mentality where I'm like, what are we really selling here? Right? Like that's the thing you should always like, you know, you should always be in support of what's called a brand promise, but each moment has an opportunity to be a brand promise. And like Jose was talking about, like I had an art teacher really early on put this phrase in my head, and he liked to call these things pregnant moments. Like they were just moments that were like ripe with possibilities, where like they're in the middle of doing something, but you can see everything that has happened and everything that could happen moving forward. And so the more kind of interesting pregnant moments that you can create, the better, and the more emotional truth to them, absolutely the better. And like kind of like the less work you put on the page, kind of the better too, because then the reader has to fill in the missing information. And it's not to say just intentionally leave stuff out, but just hint at things. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to show and tell. You know, like think about them. Like if you want to show this guy's a bad guy, how can I show that and not have to tell you? Like how can I show the emotional truth of this moment and not have to put a caption box in that says he's feeling sad? Like what pose, what position, what camera angle, what staging, what props around him, what can say that he's lonely or sad or whatever you want it to be. So think about the emotional truth of each moment, get it on the page. And then my other thing is like, try to overcome the limits of the medium. Like comics are still, so try to have movement. You know, comics are flat, so try to have depth. You know what I mean? Like make it visually interesting for your reader. Don't just have someone straight on talking at the camera telling you things, because that's just a novel with pictures in it. You know what I mean? Like give it a reason to be illustrated and overcome the limitations of the medium. Because if you can add depth to a thing that's flat, if you can add movement to a thing that's still, if you can add sound to a thing that's silent, you've really done your job, and that will make an emotional impact on people. So try to figure out ways to make those things happen. And there's millions of examples on how to, like Carlos was saying, like just find people who've done it better than you and ape that and do it to the best of your ability. You know what I mean? Like, you know, figure out how someone's done movement better than you do movement. Figure out how someone's done depth better than you've done depth. Like all of that stuff, you know, there's millions of pages of instructions out there just by example. So go look at them, but also look at things that aren't comic books. Like go look at fine art, go look at movie making. You know what I mean? Like go look at other visual medium that do different things and see if you can appropriate some of that into how you tell comic books. And then also be true to yourself. Like you should want to draw everything that you're drawing. The love should be on the page. Absolutely. Because people can sense that. It's an intangible that you can't teach anybody. Love what you're doing and someone will buy it because they'll sense the love coming off of it.
Absolutely, man. Jose, any advice?
Well, yeah, man. That I love what you guys have to say, Carlos, Oscar. But you can almost spell Oscar with Carlos.
My
Right?
my
So,
to my white bosses, I look like a Carlos.
yeah, you know how many times I've been called Carlos? It's ridiculous. I think it's because of the Cabrera. But not like man, you guys really put it succinctly about how you should be true to yourself, and I think that that's really what I would say is like, this is one of my mottos: be so good that you cannot be denied. That should be the peak experience that you have as an artist, right? Be so good that you cannot be denied, right? That's a quote from I think Steve Martin. Like just do your craft. You know, you look at Gonzo, you look at Oscar, and the way they just put all the effort and their love. You see it in their work. I'll use these guys as examples, right? Right here, the panelists, because their work is just phenomenal and amazing. Study their work. These are the new masters that years from now, when we look back, we're like, oh yeah, these guys did it, right? Don't give up. I mean, I'm telling you guys, don't give up. I love doing. Look, I get up. I'll tell you my day, right? I get up in the morning. I wake up. I should sleep more. Like my wife said, you gotta sleep in more, man. You burn the candle on two ends. I'm like, I gotta get up. I gotta draw. You know, I want to go draw. I want to go design. I want to create. Right. I get my coffee on. I go in. Right. I suffer for it. I suffer from art because I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. I gotta go do therapy. Right. The first 2 hours in the day, and at night I burn the candle on the other end. Right. I'm like, am I done for the day? My daughter's asleep. I'm diving in. Like right now, I sacrificed art to do this podcast. To do this. No, but I kid you guys. I'm just giving you the experience of the love. Love it first. You know, and it's hard. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I gotta draw that subway. I hate drawing tracks. I hate doing this, you know. But I do it, and I just kind of put my movie on, and I'm just gonna draw it. I'm gonna draw it. It's, some stuff is boring to draw, but I do it because I know that in the overall, like it's part of the meat, right? The meat is the character and that's around it, and I'm like, I gotta do it because I want to do it my way. A thing about line, real quick, and I know we're ending. Like look at the great inkers, the way they do their lines and their line work is that it jumps off the page. Like they skip beats, right? They're irregular, but when you look at it from back this way, you're like, wow, this is beautiful. When you look at it up close, like, wow, that guy really did his line work, did his homework. Anyway, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Love what you're doing. You'll find the meaning in the stories that you want to tell. Live your life so that you can start to have fodder for the fire, right? So you can tell the stories that you want to tell about your experiences. Anyway, that's all I got. That's all he wrote.
No, that's all beautiful, man. And I really appreciate you guys for joining me today. Lastly, we'll start with Oscar. Tell us about your upcoming projects that are people should definitely check out, and then we'll wrap up with that.
All right. Well, Mashable and Grifty issue 4, Son of the Master, is out now digitally. Just go to our Twitter, and you can find out where to get that at 5 Meets. In addition to that, in the next month or so, Mashable and Grifty Volume 1 open for biz, which is issue 1 through 4, all in full color, plus sketchbook, annotations, and a couple other really cool surprises in it. A big, fat 230-page monster that will be available in about a month or two. I got to get it in the hands of the Kickstarter backers first. It's literally on a mail truck coming to my house. And in addition to that, I have something that I'm working on with Frederick Aldama, and hopefully that will be out this year. It's something completely out of the box for me and something very uncomfortable to work on because it's about real life stuff. But I'm happy to do it, and it's definitely out of my comfort zone artistically as well. And that should be out hopefully this year. I got to get back on that as well. And Just take a look at our Teespring. Go to the Twitter, and every once in a while we have new shirts up there, and that's all she wrote. That's what we're doing.
Awesome, Jose.
I was just trying to come up with some stuff so that I can share projects in my head just from listening to you guys talk. You guys are inspiring. I'm just doing some illustrations right now. I'm working on some. The dinosaur book. I'm working on my second dinosaur book, the Carnivore edition. Thank you for that, Bobby, for that plug. And that's fun. I finished all the illustrations. I just got to do the writing. The writing is the research and for all the dinosaurs and how they tore up that meat. So I'm doing that right now, and I'm working on a couple of illustrations that the monster themes. I think I'm exercising something subconsciously, right? There's like something's going on. So look for me on Instagram. I'm at Art of Jose Cabrera, and also on Facebook, so you can see my updates and my current work. I also sell stuff, some posters if you want, reasonably priced. So you can look at that, and a lot of this, I can't show the stuff that I did for Universal Studios, but hopefully they'll release it. I'll win and they'll make it a movie and I'll be rich and I'll forget everybody. Or they release it and then I can share the work and some of the pieces that I submitted. But anyway, go to Art Jose Cabrera. Also josecabrera.com. You can find my work there, my latest works. But yeah, and what is it called? To like or join when you do Instagram?
Yeah, follow, yeah.
Follow, thank you. Yeah, that.
And then Jay?
So the big thing, well, yeah, there you go. So Lamano del Destino, first of all, I don't know, a lot of people from like Modesto, and I think Bobby and I think Oscar, I think you guys all supported my Kickstarter. I just want to let anyone who's watching this know it is happening. Just talk to my printer. It has been a nightmare. Like so many people who are in the supply chain went out of business because of COVID. We have been scrambling. It is happening. I talked to my printer this week. Hopefully press check soon. I think we had miscounted our pagination, so I was 2 pages short. I just dropped those off yesterday or Monday. It's now Wednesday. Shit's happening. Sorry, I don't know if we swear. So anyway, those are happening. Thank you to everyone who backed that. Appreciate it. That's the bilingual version of the comic book. The English-only version of the trade paperback, so collecting all 6 issues. Also the back matter, that is coming out through Image Comics and Top Cow in May 19th. It's on shelves. You can order it now through, I think, May 15th through Diamond Previews. You can order La Mano del Destino. You can also pre-order it on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart, literally almost any bookstore you can order the comic through. So just if you want, but that, I got to say, that version isn't as spiffy as the Kickstarter version. It is English only. It's a little bit smaller than the Kickstarter version was like slightly bigger. This one's just standard comic book size. It's 6 3/4 by 10.5. Anyway, but it does have everything. So it's got, the paper isn't quite as nice, but it is a nice digest version of it through Image Comics, La Mano del Destino. Buy it wherever comic books are sold. Through, I think, April 15th is the last time you can order it. Although I think Amazon and Barnes & Noble will let you order it a little later. So yeah, that's my only pitch is La Mano del Destino.
Beautiful, guys. Again, I encourage everybody to check out all these projects, right? All these works right here by these wonderful artists. I'm Bobby Hernandez, host of Cuentos Y Comics. Thank you for joining us. And this was the Latinx Comics Arts Festival After Hours. Thank you so much.